Okay, well, the first stage of the painting is completely dry now, so I'm going to come in and work on the main animal, and I'm beginning by putting down some bursts of pure titanium white. So up until now, I've been using tinting white, which has a slight iridescence and is less opaque than the titanium white. So it's great for making subtle highlights, soft edges, translucent layers. But the titanium white is fantastic for really bright white highlights. Now the pure white I need to use rather sparingly to give it maximum impact throughout the painting. But a few bursts along the top of the sheep here is appropriate, I feel. And a little bit there on the head. And a little bit there on the head as well. Now next up, I'm just grabbing this little brush here. Oh, there we go. Couldn't work out why that wasn't on camera. This little filbert. And just grabbing the titanium white again. And a little bit of the cerulean blue. We'll just come in and refine the shape of the nose there. I'm going to blend that in a little bit to the still wet titanium white, just so that it's not too harsh a transition. Just managed to put my fingertip into the still wet paint there, so we'll just clean that off. So continuing with this pale blue. And then I'm adding just a touch more blue to that same mixture. And we'll use that on the legs of the animal. Now I'm using much less water in the mixture as well now. So this technique that I've used here today, or for this painting, is similar to the technique I use when I'm painting portraits. And so there are some videos of my portrait painting on the channel if you're interested. But the technique I use is to basically go in with, generally speaking anyway, is to go in with fluid layers and using the tinting white, lots of water content, visible brush strokes within large patches of paint, and then when that's dry, I'll then come in with controlled little marks of highlights and shadow with the tinting white. So I'm applying that same technique but to animals and landscapes now. One of my favourite techniques, actually. I really enjoy doing it. Okay, so that's worked reasonably well, I feel. So a little bit more of the cerulean blue, a little bit of the ultramarine going in now, and a little bit of burnt umber, and as you can see, I can use this colour for some shadowy areas on the legs, and then we can continue with that to begin to put some shadows in on and around the head. And there's not a huge amount of blue on, this particular sheep in terms of the fleece, but I just added a couple of touches there, just as like a little experiment to see how it would look. I'm fairly happy with those little touches I've added. And while I was chatting away for that last sentence or so, I've just been adding even more of the burnt umber to the mixture. So we'll come in and add some shadow onto the belly there. Now the deepest shadow on the belly needs to be quite a lot darker, but again, it's all about just sort of working your way towards where you want to go. No need to rush and do it all in one move unless you particularly want to. All right, let's go even more burnt umber and even more ultramarine blue. I'm mixing that in with what's left on my brush, so it's not going to be too dark is my hope. But hopefully it's still going to have a little bit of power as a shadowy colour. Just getting a little bit more water into the mix for this next move. So using the brush edge on, just want some slightly narrower brush marks. Okay, next I'm going to this little 1/2 inch flat, grabbing some of the cad yellow, a little touch of the cad red, and it's a fairly fluid mix this time, but I'm just going to lightly layer that over the top of some of the shadowy area and the underside, or beginnings of the underside of the belly there. Now, the colour of the sheep is not as orange as that, but I personally quite like the way that orange is working on the painting. Now, that's not to say I won't subdue areas of that orange in a moment, but for now, I'm fairly content with that orange. Similar approach here. Again, yeah, the sheep isn't this orange, but no reason we can't have a bit of fun with the colours. Now, there are also some very subtle hints of purple in the photo I'm looking at. So I'm going to grab some cerulean blue and a touch of the red. And that's mixed in with some of the tinting white, actually, which was just left on the palette. So I'm not sure that's quite the right colour, but we'll give that a go. Let's see what we get if I... It's not quite what I had in mind, but it's not too bad. So at this stage, I'm very much combining what I'm seeing in the reference with what I think will work for my painting. Okay, I'm going to go back to the filbert now and grab some of that orangey colour I had and mix it in with one of the light brown colours I used the other day. I'm just going to break up that little patch of white that I put down earlier. And coming back in with some tinting white. And a bit more of that same colour, but it's mostly tinting white now. A fairly fluid mix of it. I want to just add a few subtle light areas. Back to my 1/2 inch flat. Let's just clean that up properly. So tinting white, fluid mix, and I'm squinting now at the reference. I'm just lightly, very lightly, it's kind of a combination of fluid but also almost a dry brush approach, if that makes sense, in that I'm just sort of feathering the brush tips across the paper. So I'm putting down a translucent layer of white, so when that dries back, you know, a lot of the colour work that I've done will still show through. And that's probably enough on the animal's body for the moment. Now the legs are looking perhaps rather too blue at the moment, but again, I don't mind that too much. But we will just add a little bit of titanium white with just the tiniest touch of a pale blue in there. I'll add just a few little bursts of that to create a highlight, but a fairly subdued one. And now I'm going to come in with a small round and a mixture of ultramarine and a touch of burnt umber. And we'll use that to put in a nostril. The line of the mouth, a little shadow under there, a little bit of artistic license there, but you know, that's the name of the game. A little bit of darkness here on this ear. We'll just make the outline of the head a little more dramatic and just raise the line of the top of the head there as well. And then I can begin to look at the rest of the animal and say to myself, okay, well, I've got this very dark colour to hand on my brush. Where else can I use that, you know, sparingly to just tidy things up a little, or so a little bit there. Not sure that's quite what I intended just then with that last mark, but we'll put a little line going down the leg there. A little bit there. Probably enough of that for the moment. Now for the eye on the main animal. Just cleaning out this little round brush, going to carry on with the same one. And what I'm going to do is grab some of that orangey colour that I had mixed up before. And I'm just going to put that down as is, where the eye is. Just trying to line that up about right, so it's around about here. That's not too bad. I think it's perhaps a little bit too. No, I think just trying to judge if that's in the right spot. That's what I'm talking to myself about. I think that's not too bad. Let's put a little bit more of that down. And then grabbing, I haven't cleaned the brush out, but I'm just grabbing a little touch of the titanium white. I'm going to put a little line of highlight in there. and then washing the brush out. Going to grab a little bit of pure burnt umber, and just below that highlight put in a little narrow line there. That started to bring hopefully the sheep's eye to life. Coming back in with that dark colour, let's just adjust this nostril a little bit. And then with the touch of the tinting white, just make sure the end of the nose is sort of connected to that nostril. Then back in with the purpley colour that I used. Can't remember where I used it now. I used it there, I think. So as that goes into shadow, we'll sort of connect the end of the nose a little better to the nostril. Now at the moment I've got rather a dark outline going on around that top edge of the head, so let's put some other darks in and around the head without going too crazy. I want to keep some of that first layer of paint showing, but at the same time I needed to, hopefully you can see, I don't know how well that'll show up on camera, but by adding those patches of dark elsewhere within the silhouette of the head, it stopped that blue outline from sticking out too much. All right, so that sheep is sort of coming together reasonably well, I feel. I think I could probably do with a few more brighter highlights though on the animal. I want to make those a little multicoloured. So what we'll do is we'll grab titanium white and a little hint of yellow. And now that's too yellow, but that's okay. That's okay for what we're doing. And I'm deliberately going to cross over and partially obscure some of the pure white highlights that I put down, just to break those up a little. Okay, and now I'm dipping into the orange that I had and mixing it in with the pale yellow. So we'll use that to kind of cut into some of the shadows we've created already. Now, not looking to completely remove the shadowy marks, but just kind of disguise the way they were painted, if that makes sense. Okay, let's get a little bit of red in there. And then by adding a lot of titanium white, I can create what I'm hoping will be a very pale pink. Yep, that's worked okay. And then having put in a multitude of different colors as highlights, I'm going to come back to the pure titanium white just for a few little bursts. And then go into that purplish color I had, add a little bit of the cad red, a bit of the cad yellow, and hopefully this will be a fairly warm brown. Yep, that's more or less what I wanted. So now having added some sort of highlight colors, now I can add some little shadowy colors now. So in the same way I cut in with the highlights into some of the shadow areas, I can cut into the lighter areas with shadowy marks, just a little bit. So I really like at the moment the way the sort of a fleece of and a multitude of colours in the fleece is working. It's not hyper realistic or anything, but I think it's sort of giving the animal quite a lot of life, and hopefully the eye sort of dances around quite a bit. Now, one of the things I want to do is just subdue this horizon line where the watercolour marker is still showing. Now, I don't actually mind that blue line being there, but I want it to be much weaker than it is. So I'm going to grab some of the tinting white to begin with and mix that in with just what little paint I've got left on my brush. Fair amount of water, and I'm going to begin by just kind of putting a streak of that colour both over the line and over the little bit of the landscape, a little bit of the land I should say, and a little bit of the sky, just to kind of subdue that whole area. And I won't be able to tell exactly how well that's worked until it's completely dry, but that colour's working reasonably well. So I'm going to continue using that over here and just there where that's peeking out, and I'm going to continue it down a little bit lower on the land. Okay, so the idea is to push that back into the distance. I'm going to hopefully leave most of this as is. I need to tidy up around the legs though. So we may as well do that now, tidy up the shape of some of these legs. So I'm just coming in with kind of fairly dilute cad yellow, which was most of what I used for that layer, if memory serves me correctly. And it's got a little bit of the orangey colour in there, the browny colour. It's not completely pure. Okay, I think that's definitely helped. And then for the foreground, what I'm going to do is go back to my 1-inch flat. So as I started to say before, so my hope is this is going to disappear off into the distance. This is going to be the middle ground, and then the foreground I'm going to make much greener and brighter, hopefully. So what I'll do is grab some of the titanium white, mix that in with the cad yellow, some of the cerulean blue, and I'm going to put a corner of pure white on one end of the brush, and we'll see what this looks like when it goes down. It's not quite what I had in mind. I think I need to go add more yellow. Let's just grab a dollop of yellow. Yeah, that's a bit more like it, I think. Let me just pull the camera back a touch so you can see what I'm up to. There we go. And this has the secondary purpose of hiding some of these watercolor marker runs as well. See if I can just move the camera again. There we go. So I've picked up a little edge of white and a little edge of yellow on the... So there's yellow on one edge of my brush and yellow on the opposite edge. So it's just a nice, easy way to create some random marks. Okay, just need to wash the brush out again. Then I can start thinking about these lambs on the left-hand side and how much I want to do in terms of, getting them right. So, before I go too much further though, I need to just grab some more oil paint. So coming back in with my filbert, and we'll just use this yellow to refine can get a little bit of white in there as well, actually a bit of tinting white, just to refine the shape of this lamb. So I think I've made this lamb a little chubbier than it actually is, which is something of a fault with this one as well, actually. But I felt overall, you know, it's kind of convincing as an animal, I felt. So fair enough, I'll let that go. You know, it's not really about having to be perfect, but you just want it to be an impactful painting, really. So slimmed him down a little bit there. Just adding a little bit more of the tinting white over the top, just to soften that yellow a bit. And then, yeah, so there are a few little corrections to the body I've got to do here. But probably the easiest way to do that initially, I think, especially because there is some brown patterning on the fleece of this little lamb, is to come in with some burnt umber, or at least a burnt umber based brown. So I'm mixing some burnt umber in with one of the orangey browns I had. And let's see if we can partially correct the shape of that head. In fact, I quite like making the colour of the head a little warmer there. So we'll carry on with that for the moment. I'll probably darken it again in a bit, but I'm thinking also about the colour scheme of the whole painting. And I think this animal works well against the sky, and then the little pop of darkness on the head is okay. But I don't want any other things to be too gloomy and somber. It's not really the idea of this painting. So part of the problem I've got is, I mean, no excuses, but I'm struggling to see the actual outline of the head in my reference, because he's nuzzling up against the body of another little lamb. So, you know, but that's the name of the game, trying to sort that sort of stuff out. So we'll press on, and then it comes down here somewhere. Tucks in, so that I don't feel that line was too far out, the one I had before. Comes in about there. There's a little nook where the leg joins the body. And then in terms of the outline of the back, comes along there, dips down a bit, dips up, or comes up I should say, and then the tail's there. So I've made the body too short in my original drawing. There's his tail. Leg comes down about there. Upper leg's around about there. So the lower leg should be over here somewhere. So I don't think that's too bad. So yes, I think that's improved things so far. Need to go back to that yellow, my sort of cover-up colour, and hide some areas there. Right, now, how are we going to treat these little guys? Well, to begin with, I think I can keep going with that brown because they've got this brown patterning on them, and we'll hint at some of that. And then I'm thinking about the colours I've used here, thinking about whether I want to sort of mimic those or complement them. I think what I'm going to do to begin with is come in with a little bit of titanium white and a little bit of the cerulean blue. So just to begin to add a little bit of lightness to the fleece. As I do that, I can cover up some of the line work that I just did. And then that bluey sort of colour will complement quite nicely with a little bit of orange, I think. So we'll grab a bit of the cad yellow, mix it in with this brown that I was using here, touch of the red in there, and I'm not quite sure what I intended to do with that, but we're going to put it on now. So I think I need a lot more white. I think that's what I was planning. Let's mix that in with a lot more of the tinting white. So that's begun to brighten those two up quite nicely. So before I start adding any pure white highlights in, I'm just going to go back to my little filbert brush and mix up some ultramarine blue and a little bit of the burnt umber, and then we can add some shadows. Whoops, definitely don't want the paint running. Let's just wipe the brush down a bit. A little hint of an eye. And I'm thinking that's a little darker than I would like, so I'm going to go more cerulean blue in the mix to begin with. I'll come back to that head in a bit, but I don't mind sort of stylizing these two lambs because I quite like the orange and blue look, even though it's completely unrealistic. So the two front legs are sort of completely together. But I can use this colour to begin to put some shadows in. And I can always darken certain regions later and add highlights as well. But at the moment, the way I'm feeling at the moment is I think I'll definitely add some highlights, but at the moment I like this level of this colour for the shadow. So I'm going to cover up that very dark stuff I put in. I still don't think that's quite right, but I kind of feel it's close enough for what I'm after. So with that same kind of idea in mind, let's block in this little animal's head. And the ear of that animal is casting a nice shadow down the body, so we'll include that. Again, the front legs are, well, they're not together actually in this case, are they? So let's put the other leg in. So not in quite the same position as the reference, but hopefully convincing enough. All right, so I'm fairly happy with that so far. kind of feel I want to put a few little highlights in on the heads of the animals though. Just a little bit. Let's grab some tinting white. Get that into the mix. Just sort of subdued highlights. So I'm just spraying the painting there with water. Now the rest of them is pretty much in shadow. So I'm going to clean off the brush, but then come in with ultramarine blue and dip in or add in a little bit of this green I used here to give me a very subdued green. It's very much a blue, you know, it's mostly blue basically, but I'm just going to put a few little hints of that just a little bit of variation in those very deep shadows. And now what I want to do is add some highlights. So, you know, as you can tell, I'm not copying the colours on these little lambs at all, really. Although I intended to initially, but that's just not the way things have worked out. So, titanium white and cad yellow. Now I'm being careful not to make that a continuous line along the back. And I can use that same highlight colour to break up the edge of that deep shadow a little bit. Picked up a bit of blue there, that was unintentional. Let's see if we can hide that. That'll do. Now let's get a little bit of orange into that mixture and a lot more titanium white. Now the only bit at the moment that I don't like is this highlight on the back of the neck. I think that needs to be close. I think I need to go brown there basically, just to subdue that. Even though I'm not sure I like. Maybe I need some of the blue. I think that works the best so far, but it's a little messy. But I'll leave it as is for now. And then just going to come in with the tinting white, pure tinting white. Just add a little lick along there. Perhaps that will work better. Probably overthinking it. Oh, I think I see part of the problem. I haven't really captured the top of that ear, which is sort of doing something more like that. So I think I'll leave that there for the moment.